Hello everyone, my name is John Miller, and I am currently researching the history of major wars in human history. Previously, I had a channel dedicated to sharing historical content, but my first channel is currently on pause due to being overloaded, so this will be my new channel. This channel will mainly focus on World War II, one of the most brutal and bloody wars in human history. My purpose is not only to recount the war, but also to deliver an important message to today's younger generation. We must understand history in order to truly value peace. Today, in about 15 minutes, I will briefly talk about the root causes that led to World War II. World War II was not a historical accident. It did not break out because of a single event. Instead, this war was the result of unhealed wounds left after World War I, hidden political ambitions, a severe economic crisis, the rise of dictatorships, and a series of wrong decisions that continued for many years. In today's video, we will go through 5 main causes. First, the wounds left after World War I. Second, the economic crisis and the rise of Adolf Hitler. Third, the spread of fascism. Fourth, the policy of appeasement by Britain and France. And fifth, the final straw, the invasion of Poland. But before we get into the main part, if you find this content meaningful, please like, follow, and share this video so that more people can learn about this brutal war, as well as the lessons history has left for humanity. Thank you very much. Now, let's begin. But Germany was not the only country moving down a dangerous path. In Italy, Benito Mussolini built a fascist regime and dreamed of restoring the glory of the ancient Roman Empire. Mussolini wanted Italy to become a major military power. He wanted to expand Italian influence across the Mediterranean and Africa. In Asia, Japan was also taking the path of military. Japan's military leaders wanted to expand their territory, control natural resources, and build a vast empire in East Asia. Japan moved into Manchuria in 1931. After that, the war between Japan and China continued to escalate. By this time, the world was not facing just one fire. Many fires were burning at the same time. Germany wanted to destroy the European order created after the First World War. Italy wanted to expand its empire. Japan wanted to dominate Asia. These 3 ambitions gradually pulled the world into a dangerous axis: Germany, Italy, and Japan. Later, they would be known as the Axis powers. What did these regimes have in common? They worshipped military strength. They glorified the leader. They saw war as a tool for expanding power, and they believed that democratic countries like Britain, France, and the United States were too weak, too hesitant, and too afraid of war to stop them. That belief did not come out of nowhere. It came from the way the world had reacted in the years before the war. To understand why the Second World War broke out, we have to go back to the year 1919. When the First World War ended, Germany was on the losing side. After 4 years of bloody conflict, Germany was forced to sign the Treaty of Versailles. For many Germans, this was not simply a peace treaty. It was a humiliation. Germany lost territory. Its military was severely restricted. The country was forced to accept responsibility for causing the war, and it had to pay an enormous amount of money in reparations to the victorious nations. Germany's economy had already been weakened by the war. Now, it sank even deeper into crisis. People lost their jobs. The currency collapsed. At one point, people had to carry bags full of money just to buy the simplest everyday items. But the greatest danger did not lie only in the economy. It lay in the mind of an entire nation. Many Germans believed they had been treated unfairly. They felt humiliated, suffocated, and forced to live under the shadow of defeat. that atmosphere, a dangerous idea began to grow. The idea that Germany needed revenge, that Germany had to restore its honor, that Germany needed a strong leader to bring the nation back to greatness. And this was the fertile ground on which Adolf Hitler would rise. In my view, a major war rarely breaks out because of a single event. It usually begins with wounds that were never healed. For Germany after the First World War, that wound was Versailles. In 1929, an economic shock shook the entire world. It was the Great Depression. In the United States, the stock market collapsed, but its effects quickly spread to Europe, especially to Germany. Many factories shut down. Millions of people lost their jobs. Families fell apart. People no longer trusted the government. They needed an explanation. They needed someone to blame. And they needed someone who promised that everything would become better.
Liegt Deutschland in uns, marschiert Deutschland und hinter uns kommt Deutschland!
Hitler understood this very clearly. He did not speak only about the economy. He spoke about honor, about national pride, about a Germany that had been betrayed, about abolishing the Treaty of Versailles, about rebuilding the army, about turning Germany into a great power once again. Those promises struck directly at the pain of the German people. In his speeches, Hitler did not speak merely like a politician. He spoke like someone who was igniting the anger that had been smoldering inside millions of people. The Nazi Party gradually grew stronger. From a small extremist force, it became a massive political movement. In 1933, Hitler became Chancellor of Germany. From that point on, Germany began to change very quickly. Opposition parties were suppressed. Power was concentrated in Hitler's hands. Freedom of the press disappeared. Propaganda flooded everyday life. Children were educated according to Nazi ideology. People were taught that they belonged to a superior nation. And most importantly, Germany began to be honored. This violated the Treaty of Versailles, but Hitler did not care. He believed that if Germany became stronger, the world would not be unity. Right now, in Germany, the world would not stop. After the First World War, Britain and France understood very clearly just how terrifying war could be. They had not merely read about it in reports. They had lived through it. Millions of people had died in the mud of the trenches. Young soldiers had left home full of hope, only to never return. An entire generation of European youth was almost wiped out. Behind the battlefields were ruined cities, exhausted economies, and families who had lost fathers, sons, and husbands. That pain was still far too fresh. So when Hitler began taking increasingly bold actions, Britain and France did not immediately want confrontation. Not because they failed to see the danger, but because, in their minds, another war was simply too frightening to imagine. They hoped that peace could be preserved through compromise. They believed that if Hitler was given part of what he wanted, perhaps he would stop. But history sometimes becomes tragic, precisely because of hopes like these. In 1936, Hitler sent troops into the Rhineland, a region that, under the agreements made after the First World War, Germany was not allowed to militarize. This was not merely a military action, it was a gamble, because Hitler himself knew that the German army at that time was not truly ready for a major confrontation. If Britain and France had responded firmly, if they had ordered Germany to withdraw, Hitler might very well have been forced to back down. But no one acted. There was no attack. There was no harsh punishment. There was no warning strong enough to make Hitler afraid. And from that moment, Hitler understood something extremely dangerous. The great powers of Europe feared war more than they feared him. once he realized that Hitler no longer stopped. In 1938, Germany annexed Austria in an event known as the Anschluss. German troops marched in, Nazi flags flew, and Austria was swallowed into the German Reich. Once again, the world responded weakly. Then, in that same year, Hitler turned toward Czechoslovakia. He demanded the Sudetenland, a region where many German-speaking people lived. And once again, Britain and France chose the path of negotiation. At the Munich conference, they agreed to let Germany take the Sudetenland, hoping that this would be Hitler's final demand. When British Prime Minister Neville Chamberlain returned to London, he declared that he had brought peace for our time. The crowds applauded. Many people breathed a sigh of relief. They wanted to believe that war had been prevented. But the truth was that peace was only a fragile illusion, because to Hitler, every Western concession was not a sign of goodwill. It was a sign of weakness. Every time Britain and France stepped back, Hitler saw the road ahead becoming wider. Every time the world stayed silent, he became even bolder. And after the Sudetenland, Hitler understood that he could demand even more. Not long afterward, Germany occupied the rest of Czechoslovakia. By then, Britain and France finally realized the truth. Hitler did not merely want to unite regions where German-speaking people lived. He did not merely want to revise the terms that Germany considered unfair after the First World War. He wanted more than that. He wanted to dominate Europe, but by the time the world realized this, perhaps things had already gone too far. And the door to a new war had almost opened. In 1939, the next target Hitler set his sights on was Poland. But Poland was not like Czechoslovakia. This was a far more dangerous gamble. Britain and France had pledged to protect Poland if the country was attacked. That meant that once German troops moved into Poland, war with Britain and France would become almost unavoidable. Yet Hitler still chose to move forward. Before taking action, he needed to make sure that the Soviet Union would not attack Germany from the east. And then, an event that stunned the entire world took place. On the 23rd of August 1939, Nazi Germany and the Soviet Union signed the Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact. On the surface, it was simply a non-aggression pact. But behind it was a secret agreement to divide spheres of influence in Eastern Europe. Poland was now trapped between two giant powers, Germany in the west and the Soviet Union in the east. Hitler believed that he could now attack Poland without worrying about being stabbed in the back by the Soviet Union. And then, the morning of the 1st of September 1939 arrived. The German army launched its attack on Poland using the tactic of blitzkrieg, also known as lightning war. Bombers swooped down and destroyed key targets. Tanks surged across the border. Infantry followed closely behind, quickly seizing roads, towns, and cities. Poland fought back with great courage, but it was overwhelmed by Germany's military strength and the terrifying speed of the attack. On the 3rd of September, 1939, Britain and France declared war on Germany. The Second World War officially broke out in Europe. But even after war had been declared, many people still could not imagine just how far this nightmare would spread. They did not yet know that within only a few years, the flames of war would pull almost the entire world into its vortex. From Europe to North Africa, from the Atlantic Ocean to the Pacific Ocean, from great cities to small villages, nowhere was truly safe from the storm that was approaching. In 1939, the next target Hitler set his sights on was Poland. But Poland was not like Czechoslovakia. This was a far more dangerous gamble. Britain and France had pledged to protect Poland if the country was attacked. That meant that once German troops moved into Poland, war with Britain and France would become almost unavoidable. Yet Hitler still chose to move forward. Before taking action, he needed to make sure that the Soviet Union would not attack Germany from the east. And then, an event that stunned the entire world took place. On the 23rd of August 1939, Nazi Germany and the Soviet Union signed the Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact. On the surface, it was simply a non-aggression pact. But behind it was a secret agreement to divide spheres of influence in Eastern Europe. Poland was now trapped between two giant powers, Germany in the west and the Soviet Union in the east. Hitler believed that he could now attack Poland without worrying about being stabbed in the back by the Soviet Union. And then, the morning of the 1st of September 1939 arrived. The German army launched its attack on Poland using the tactic of blitzkrieg, also known as lightning bolt. Bombers swooped down and destroyed key targets. Tanks surged across the border. Infantry followed closely behind, quickly seizing roads, towns, and cities. Poland fought back with great courage, but it was overwhelmed by Germany's military strength and the terrifying speed of the attack. On the 3rd of September, 1939, Britain and France declared war on Germany. The Second World War officially broke out in Europe, but even after war had been declared, many people still could not imagine just how far this nightmare would spread. They did not yet know that within only a few years, the flames of war would pull almost the entire world into its vortex, from Europe to North Africa, from the Atlantic Ocean to the Pacific Ocean, from great cities to small villages. Nowhere was truly safe from the storm that was approaching. So in the end, why did the Second World War break out? To say it was because of Hitler is true, but not enough. To say it was because Germany invaded Poland is also true, but it still does not reach the root of the matter. A war of such enormous scale does not simply appear overnight. It was like a fire that had been smoldering for a very long time. All it needed was one final spark, and everything erupted. And to understand why the world fell into that tragedy, we have to look at the many layers of causes that had piled up on top of one another. First, the Treaty of Versailles, after the First World War, left a very deep wound in the heart of Germany. The German people did not only lose territory, money, and status. They also carried a feeling of being forced, humiliated, and treated unfairly. That feeling did not disappear. It remained within German society, quietly building up into anger. Then, the Great Depression struck. When jobs disappeared, money lost its value, and the future became uncertain. People easily fell into despair. And when a society is desperate, it often wants to believe in someone who promises to bring it back to its former glory. Hitler appeared at exactly that moment. He did not create all of Germany's pain, but he knew how to exploit it. Hitler and the Nazi Party turned wounds into hatred, fear into obedience, and the desire for national revival into a war machine. That was the most frightening part. A dictatorship does not grow powerful only through guns and bullets. It also grows powerful when people are led to believe that violence is the only way to regain honor. But the problem was not only in Germany. At the same time, fascism and militarism were also rising in Italy and Japan. The world at that time did not have just one fire burning. There were many fires burning in many places. Each country pursued its own ambitions, but they all shared one belief, that military power could decide everything. Meanwhile, Britain and France were still haunted by the painful memories of the First World War. They feared another war, and that fear led them to choose appeasement. At first, appeasement seemed like a way to preserve peace, but in reality, it made Hitler wrongly believe that no one truly dared to stop him. Each time Hitler took another step forward without being stopped, he became even more convinced that he could go further. And then, Poland became the final limit. The invasion of Poland was not the only cause of the Second World War. It was the final straw. It turned all the tensions, mistakes, ambitions, and hesitation that had been building for years into a full-scale war. On the 1st of September 1939, when German troops moved into Poland, the world entered a new dark chapter. 2 days later, Britain and France declared war on Germany. From that moment on, war was no longer just a danger. It had become reality. According to American military expert John Miller, the greatest lesson from this period is this: war does not begin only with the greed of aggressors. It also begins with the silence, hesitation, and delay of those who have the power to stop them but wait too long. And that is what makes history so frightening. Not because the past is already gone, but because the mistakes of the past, if humanity is not alert, can still repeat themselves in another form. Thank you for watching this video until this very moment. I did not make this video to reopen the wounds of war, but because, when I look at the current state of the world, I truly feel worried. Tensions, conflicts, arms races, and threats between nations make many of us feel uneasy, as if just one small mistake could lead to a major catastrophe. That is why I want to share a very simple message. Peace is the most precious thing humanity has. Most people in this world love peace. No one wants war. No one wants to see young people leave their families and go to the battlefield. No one wants to witness parents losing their children, children losing their parents, beautiful cities turning into ruins, economies collapsing, and homes, schools, and hospitals being destroyed in just a single moment. If a third world war were ever to truly happen, the price we would pay would not be only money or territory. It would be blood, it would be tears, it would be the future of our children and grandchildren. It would be dreams that never had the chance to come true, buried under smoke and fire. History has already given humanity too many painful lessons. That is why each of us, even as ordinary people, still has a responsibility to preserve and protect peace in our own way, through understanding, through the voice of conscience, by refusing to promote hatred, and by refusing to remain indifferent to the danger of war. If you also believe that peace must be protected, please leave a subscription, a like, or share this video. That action may seem small, but it can help this message spread further and reach more people. At the moment, my research work is quite busy, so your feedback would help me a lot in improving my next videos. If you think this video is good and meaningful, please leave the number 1. If you feel it is still not good enough, please leave the number 2. I will read every piece of feedback so I can make better and more meaningful content in the future. Once again, thank you for being here with me. May our world always live in peace.